If you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, whatever you ask of God, he will grant you. Your brother, said Jesus to her, will rise again. Martha said, I know he will rise again at the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. If anyone believes in me, even though he dies, he will live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she said. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who was to come into this world. Jesus said in great distress, with a sigh that came from the heart, Where have you put him? They said, See how much he loved him. But there were some who remarked, He opened the eyes of the blind man. Could he not have prevented this man's death? Still sighing, Jesus reached the tomb. It was a cave with a stone to close the opening. Jesus said, Take the stone away. Martha said to him, Lord, by now he will smell. This is the 4th day. Jesus replied, Have I not told you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you for hearing my prayer. I knew indeed that you always hear me, but I speak for the sake of all these who stand round me, so that they may believe it was you who sent me. When he had said this, he cried in a loud voice, Lazarus, here, come out. The dead man came out, his feet and hands bound with bands of stuff and a cloth round his face. Jesus said to them, Unbind him, let him go free. Many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what he did believed in him. And this is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. When as a new bishop I was going up to Geraldton, a priest friend of mine, dear friend, didn't come, but he wrote me a letter that arrived the same day. And in it he said, I thought it would do you much more good if I spent the afternoon in prayer and within the parish church than going up there and sharing your consecration. Then he went on and he said, now don't you think that when you're going around those mining towns up there that you're establishing the church? He said, you're not. He says, when you go up there and go around those towns, you're going looking for the church. You're going to find the church, not make it. In other words, he was reminding me that it was people, baptized, sharing faith and life, that make up the church, the people of God, Christ himself. This parish of Dianella, Our Lady of the Assumption, that celebrates today its 25 years of life, is very unique in many ways. It's very difficult to count them all. But for one, you've had one parish priest over the 25 years. Mind you, he's had 6 bishops working for him at that time. There was Archbishop Prendeville, and Bishop McEwen, and Bishop Quinn, Bishop Healy, Archbishop Goody, and myself doing various things as the parish built up. But he's been here all the time. And only a year or so ago, we were gathered here for another celebration of 40 years of priesthood. It was a very moving celebration because Father O'Mara on that occasion spoke very clearly from his heart about how he had sought in his life, before and after ordination, to follow closely the Lord who called him on. You've been very favoured, therefore, for the last 25 years, you and those who have gone before you, when he was presented to you as parish priest by Archbishop Prendeville on Palm Sunday of 1965. That's one uniqueness. The other uniqueness, of course, was that you had a parish church before you had a parish priest. He came out and was installed as parish priest in your church. Of course, you've been unique in many other ways, and just because each one of you is different, and the gifts you've brought to life to make this parish live has been quite unique. You have at the door, or you will have as you go out, a Silver Jubilee souvenir. I was going to say it tells the whole story. It doesn't quite, and I'll tell you why I say that in a moment. But it certainly spells out the growth, step by step, of the parish plant and of the people who worked together with Father to create the parish plant, the parish organisations, the structures within which people have lived their Christian lives for 25 years. It wasn't long after Father came, and I'm following briefly that sequence of your souvenir, the sacramental life of a Catholic community came very much to the fore. The first communions and the confirmations and the baptisms, they all began to appear. And no doubt the numbers increased as time went on. But that sacramental life, centred around the Eucharist and the Mass within your parish church, is the gift of the Lord whereby he enriches us with a new life and calls us to live that new life in mission for himself. Following the sacramental life of a parish, it was very soon that the St. Vincent de Paul Conference was established, recognising, as the Lord would want us, that there are those in the midst of us who are in need, whether it be temporarily because of mishap or more permanently because of disability. And as you read through the souvenir, you'll see the various activities for the disabled, the poor, and so on, coming up again and again. The church community is one that is aware of the poor, and one who cannot be truly Christian without that awareness that leads to action. Of course, the parish school got many mentions, not only because of the cooperative venture that the building of that school has been, with Father in the midst, with professionals guiding, and a lot of willing hands and hearts. The men and women of this parish can look with pride at the school that has been created. But the purpose of the school was to make known to the young as they grew the truth and the love of Christ that would give power and light to their lives as they developed into adolescence and adulthood. The task of the Catholic school is a continuation of the task of parents within their homes, so that through example and within an atmosphere of truth and love as revealed by Christ, we might be challenged to respond positively in our lives. Of course, it wasn't only the children were thought of in this mission, this education mission of the church. There were also the adults. And that quite wonderful initiative that you as a parish undertook when you produced a series of videos for distribution throughout Western Australia. I think the greatest marvel of all that was bringing together, 20 or so priests, but even more wonderful perhaps, 3 or 4 bishops to contribute under cameras to the production. But it was a step looking or responding to a modern possibility of reaching people in their homes or in family groups with the truth of Christ as reflected upon by people in this our day. One could go on. There was the work for the youth that showed itself in many ways, through the Fidelity of Mary, I know, through the YCW, through the Antioch movement, and probably I've missed others. There were many devotional groups that were built up to encourage the development of our faith, the Sacred Heart Fidelity, that Fidelity of Mary, the shrine outside, and one could go on. Our Lady of Sorrow in fairly recent days, where now you have that procession which has picked up something of a tradition and culture from Castel Petroso in Italy. But these are expressions of life within the community, expressions of opportunity for growth in faith and love, and this is the structures that come with the establishment of a parish. For all that has happened in those 25 years, and I haven't covered all, that's why the souvenir is there, I give thanks to God, first of all, who has placed the faith and love and generosity in the hearts of you all. I congratulate you and give you as an example to others too of what can be achieved when people come together with their varied gifts to bring to the people of the passing years the same truth and love that Christ gave us himself. I want to say something else, and it really was put to me by another priest who this year is celebrating also 25 years. It was put to me and to those who read the booklet that was prepared in his parish. And I'll use his words. Most of our history cannot be written down. It can only be understood in terms of faith. This is why I was saying that the book doesn't tell the whole story. It tells a lot, but not the whole story. But I go on. It's the story of thousands of ordinary people faithfully living out God's plan for their lives, but linked together by a common bond. And that bond is the bond of faith and love, the love of God himself experienced within the community of the church. That history of the individual lives is the history that I guess will last forever, because it is the history of God and the gift of life that leads to eternal life. Can I just pause now for a moment and take another angle, and that is from today's gospel. It's the story of Christ's call with his disciples to go to his friends, Martha, Mary and Lazarus, to go there because Lazarus was seriously ill and, as it turned out, was dead. The church gives us, or rather first of all, St. John gives us in his gospel, this miracle of Christ, bringing Lazarus back to life, not only because it was a miracle, but because it contained within it, and in the circumstances that surrounded it, contained in us the challenge to an active, lively faith and love, which is the very kernel of our life as a Christian community. It comes to us on this Sunday before Palm Sunday because very soon we're going to be thrown into the crises of those last 3 days of Christ before we celebrate again the wonder and joy of Easter. But let us first of all look back on a couple of points in the Gospel that was read for us at today's Mass by Father O'Mara. There were all these events of sickness and death around the friends of Jesus. These 3 very special friends that lived at Bethany, not far out of Jerusalem, only about a quarter of an hour's walk. But I'm sure a place where he often went after a hectic day in Jerusalem, arguing often enough with the Jewish leaders, where he went for a little bit of peace, a little bit of human love from his friends. There was the grief of the relatives that he had to confront. There was the unbelief of the crowds. There were the hesitations of his own disciples. But underneath all this, Jesus could detect the hand of the ultimate enemy that he must overcome through his death and resurrection. That's the dimension underneath the reality